The ceasefire is over. The US and Iran are exchanging airstrikes again. Oil prices spiked. Fuel stations across Nigeria shut the gates and the naira slipped. But here is the thing nobody saw coming. The Nigerian stock market just had its best week in months. All 5 sector indices up. Over 9 trillion naira added to market value in 5 days, and one stock went up 40% in a single week. I'm Esther, and this is your one-day market recap. Let's start with a story that had the whole world watching this week. You may remember that back in June, the US and Iran signed a ceasefire. Markets calmed. All prices came down. Well, that deal is now dead. On Wednesday, President Trump declared the ceasefire over. The US launched fresh airstrikes on Iran, and Iran struck back at US allies in the Gulf, including Bahrain, Kuwait, and Qatar. Oil prices immediately spiked. Brent crude jumped to nearly $78 a barrel, up sharply from around $70 the week before. Here in Nigeria, you felt it almost immediately. Some filling stations shut down on Thursday, refusing to sell, fearing that the Iran conflict means prices were about to go back up. Depot owners raised diesel prices overnight. But here is where the story gets interesting. By Thursday, oil had already started pulling back to around $76 a barrel. The New York Federal Reserve said it expects global energy prices to hold lower despite the resumed strikes. Markets essentially decided this conflict is serious, but it does not change the long-term direction of oil. Dangote and other depot owners held their prices at 1,075 naira per litre. The stations that had closed reopened. The panic did not last. Here is why this still matters for your money. Nigeria's 2026 budget was built on oil at $64.85 a barrel. At $76, the government is comfortably above that. But the Iran conflict is now the wild card hanging over everything. Every new development in the Middle East has the power to move oil prices, and that moves fuel costs, inflation, and the naira. The story is not over. Now the stock market, and this one is a comeback story. For 3 straight weeks, we watched the all-share index fall. This week, it answered back. The index jumped 6.35%. In 5 trading days, over 9 trillion naira was added to the market capitalization, which now sits at 156.4 trillion naira. The year-to-date return is now 56.67%. Every major sector closed in the green. Industrial goods led the recovery, up 10.46%. Oil and gas gained 8.11%. Banking rose 4.78%. Consumer goods added 3.11%, and insurance was up 4.04%. 60 stocks gained ground this week against just 28 that declined. Completely different picture from what we saw last week. Now for the company story that had traders talking this week. International breweries ended the week up 40%, from 9.50 naira to 13.30 naira in 5 days. 2 things drove this. First, the company published its first quarter 2026 results, and they were strong. Pre-tax profit came in at 40.31 billion naira, a 15% increase compared to the same period last year. For a company that spent years deep in financial trouble, these are real turnaround numbers. Second, International Breweries announced a plan to restructure its share capital to wipe out 191 billion naira in accumulated losses from its book. Think of it this way: the company is not just making money right now, it is actively cleaning up the damage from its past. Investors read both of those things together and reacted decisively. Finally, the naira, where the picture was less encouraging this week. The naira closed at 1,379.62 to the dollar at the official window on Friday, weaker than the 1,370.19 we had last week. That is a depreciation of 9.43 for the week. At the parallel market, the rate moved to 1,430 per dollar, up from 1,405 the previous week. The one bright spot, Nigeria's external reserves, kept climbing and hit $51.74 billion as of July 9th. The reserves are growing, which gives the CBN ammunition to defend the naira when pressure builds. Now here is the date you need to have in your calendar for this week: July 20th and 21st. That is when the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria holds its next meeting. The MPR has been sitting at 26.5% since February. The committee will be looking at everything: the naira, oil prices, inflation, and the Iran situation. The decision to hold, cut, or raise rates will affect your loans, your savings, and the direction of the stock market. So tell me, do you think the CBN should start cutting interest rates, or is it too soon? Let me know in the comments. I'm Esther, and I'll see you next Monday.